Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. Please pardon my appearance. I literally just came from the gym and now I'm filming this video. Usually I do that in reverse. I go to the gym after I film these videos. Today has been a very hectic day, so please bear with me. This is going to be part 2 of my 2,000 subscriber Q&A. We got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to get right into this. Spoiler alert, there is going to be a part 3. So again, if I didn't answer your question in this segment, I didn't answer it in the first segment. It'll probably be answered in either part 3, and if we have to do a part 4, we will. So, first question. Sean, I would really love for you to break down the sports card bubble of the late 1980s and early 1990s. If I were to do that, it would probably be a 20 to 30 minute video on itself. So I really can't do that in a mini Q&A like this. What I can tell you is if you want to learn more about this particular market, there's an excellent book you can read. It's called Mint Condition: How Baseball Cards Became an American Obsession. It was written by Dave Jamieson back in 2011, and you can still get it on Amazon for under $20. If you get a used copy, it'll probably be $10 or $12 shipped. Again, the book's name is Mint Condition. It's by Dave Jamieson. You can also find it probably at Barnes & Noble as well still. I have seen it there from time to time, but your probably best bet is getting it online. Next part of your question is, I would like to hear how mass-produced collectibles are for suckers. To be fair, there are people that will reach out to me and they'll be like, Sean, you know, I'm a Nintendo enthusiast. I'm just buying Nintendo Amiibo because I like them. Or I like Funko Pops. I have a couple in my cubicle at work, at the office. I just like to collect them from time to time. I know that they're not going to go up in value. What I find is, it's not so much that mass-produced collectibles are for suckers. It's the mindset of the person who is buying them. If you want to fill your whole house up with modern-era Pez, and you have the means to do so, and you recognize it's not the best investment, but you're already financially established, all your bills are paid, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and knock yourself out. You're not hurting anybody. The problem comes into play when somebody says, hey, I'm going to buy these Funko Pops because the company that made them is telling me there's only 50 in existence. Well, that means that these items are rare, and as a result of that quote-unquote rarity, these items are going to always go up in value in the short term and in the long term. That type of thinking is not correct, and that's the type of thinking that a lot of unsophisticated and uneducated speculators get into, and that's why you see people who, back during the Beanie Baby bubble, spent $100,000 and filled their whole house with Beanie Babies because they thought it was a quote-unquote investment. Again, guys, in the antiques and collectibles trade, organic collectability is king. It will always be king. This is why when I work with clients on the antique side of the trade, a lot of them thumb down their nose at the collectible side of the trade. They want nothing to do with that market. The reason why a lot of those people want nothing to do with that market is due to the concept of mass-produced scarcity. They see all these items being produced in the millions in some cases, in the hundreds of thousands, and all that manufacturers are doing is they're pulling back supply. For instance, let me use this as an example. In most cases, unless if it's a one-of-a-kind item, there is no such thing as a rare amiibo. I cannot tell you, back a year ago when I started this channel, how many people would reach out to me and they would tell me to do a video on quote-unquote rare amiibos. There is no such thing as a rare amiibo. Nintendo made, on average, hundreds of thousands of each one of those amiibos, and in some cases, they were produced in the millions. And most people who bought them kept them factory sealed. You guys are kidding yourself by paying a premium for a quote-unquote first edition, first print amiibo on eBay, thinking that it's rare or it's going to have value in the future. It's going to take 20 to 30 years for that collecting market to become established, even if it does become established, and chances are good the items that you're hoarding are not the ones that are going to become sought after if that market ever gets to that point. So what am I saying? I'm just stating organic collectability is king in all of these markets, whether we're talking about antiques, art, antiquities, collectibles, or whatever. And the mindset of the collector is what matters the most, not what the manufacturers are doing. To be fair, the goal of a company is to turn a profit. They have a fiduciary responsibility, a financial responsibility to their shareholders to turn a profit. So if they can do that by getting people out there to think that the products they're making are rare, they're going to do that. It's no harm, no foul. They're really not doing anything wrong. It's just that they're engaged in mass-produced scarcity, and you got to learn to recognize it. Enough said on that question. Thank you for your question. It was very good. Next question. What types of first edition books would you look at buying? I was looking at 1984 by George Orwell and some first edition Hemingway books, but wanted to hear your thoughts. Both books that you state are classics. Expect to pay thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars for some of those books, especially if you're going after like a first edition copy of Old Man and the Sea. Even George Orwell's 1984 is getting up there in price. What you want to look for if you're going after rare books, anything that is being read in junior high school, high schools, colleges, any classic literary title, Ethan Frome, Great Gatsby, Of Mice and Men. A lot of these books are very coveted today and will be into the near future and in the long term. That's what you want to go after if you're going after rare books. I'm going to tell you, you want quality over quantity. So you would be better off buying one rare book that costs $25,000 rather than putting your money into 5 lesser known books, because that book that costs $25,000 is probably going to have more demand and be a key title on the marketplace. One thing I like about book collecting, it's a rather calm market overall. There are sometimes some upsets in the market. I'll give you an example. I'm a huge fan of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Well, back around, I want to say 2012, when that movie came out, there were a lot of people entering the market that wanted a first edition copy of The Great Gatsby. And even to this day, the price has yet to recover. Back in the 90s, you could get a first edition copy of The Great Gatsby in fine condition, which I should state, book collecting has a different grading scale than that of comic books. You must understand this. I'm going to do a whole video on it. But the highest grade you can go in book collecting is fine condition. There's no such thing as a near mint condition book, because near mint condition in book collecting terms means fine condition. So you have to understand that weird grading scale going in. I will do a whole video devoted to book collecting sometime within the next several months on this channel so that you guys can learn the basics. It's a very fascinating market. Again, watch what you buy, and you want quality over quantity. Some of you guys have been asking me what I think about first edition Stephen King books. Early 80s Stephen King first edition novels are good. Be careful, though, when you get into the late 1990s, the 2000s, even present day. A lot of people today are buying first edition Stephen King books right when they're first published because they know they have collectible value. That's an example of mass-produced scarcity. Everybody's saving them. When Stephen King hit the scene in the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of those books, people didn't know who Stephen King was. So they didn't hoard first edition books from that particular author. So if you're going after Stephen King, you must go after the early books that he wrote first. Just keep that in mind. Great question. Let's go on to something else. Sean, can you talk about some of the lesser known auction houses in the industry and if they are better for getting deals? I really need to address this. Every now and then, I'll get a message from somebody. It'll either be through LinkedIn, maybe it'll be in the comment section of one of these videos, maybe it'll come through Facebook, and they'll ask me, Sean, I really want to know about those secret hidden auction places where I can get comic books, coins, currency, traditional antiques, collectibles, vintage toys for pennies on the dollar. Guys, I really hate to break it to you. They don't exist. There are certain auction houses that you may find that don't really cater to online bidding, or they may not have a full presence for online bidding, where you may be able to go to those auctions and get some better deals. But overall, the days of finding a giant size X-Men 1 in near mint condition or CGC 9.6 that are posted on an auction site that isn't Heritage, that isn't Comic Link, that isn't Hakes, that sells for a significant discount in the trade are pretty much over. The antiques and collectibles trade, while it is still fragmented, it is not as fragmented as it was back in the pre-internet era. Back in the 70s, 80s, even the early 90s, before the internet came to be what it is today, you would be able to find auction houses where they were good known secrets to dealers in the trade, where most average collectors never heard of them and they never went there. So if you were to come across items that were consigned at that particular auction house, you could always flip them for a profit on the secondary market. Today, that's very hard to do unless if you're really putting yourself out there. You're going to antique marts, you're going to local auctioneers that don't have an online presence or have a limited online presence. You might be able to score there, but you're really going to put a lot of work into that. For instance, let me sum this up with an example. I'm going to name 3 auction houses that a lot of you guys probably never even heard of. And then I'm going to comment further on this. I'm going to use this as an example to prove my point. Philip Weiss Auctions out of Long Island, New York, Cowan's Auctions out of Ohio, and Swan Auction Galleries, which I think is out of New York, if I recall. Both those auction houses are probably auction houses that you guys never heard of. Well, Philip Weiss just sold a record-breaking Magic the Gathering collection, and he also has already sold Pokemon cards that have sold for significant sums. So even if you never even heard of Philip Weiss, and I tell you to go to Philip Weiss Auctions online, guess what? You're going to encounter the same bidders like me who are going to bid this stuff up. You're going to encounter all these other collectors that know about that auction house. So you're really not going to get a better deal than what you would get on Heritage or Comic Link or Hakes or Christie's or Sotheby's or whatever auction house you're comparing it to. Cowan's is out of Ohio. They specialize in art glass, traditional antiques, art pottery. They achieve record prices for some of their items. I guarantee you, most of you watching this have probably never ever heard of Cowan's Auction House. Same thing is true for Swan Auction Galleries. Swan Auction Galleries caters to collectible first edition books, illustrated art, manuscripts, historical documents, vintage posters. Ironically, most people have never heard of them outside of Antiques Roadshow, but yet they get record prices for their items, guys. So you see where I'm going with this? Just because you haven't heard of an auction house doesn't mean you're going to get a deal by logging on to that auction house and bidding on items. Most of the trade is not as fragmented as it once was. For instance, there was a time, I think it was Skinner up in Boston. Was it Boston? Boston, Massachusetts, Skinner Auction House. Before they started conducting online sales and before a lot of people started going there, you used to be able to go to that auction house, and I heard more than one antique dealer tell me you could get deals all day long because a lot of the people that lived in that area who were very well-to-do, when they died, the estate was liquidated, and if they had high-end antiques, they were automatically consigned to that auction house. So all those dealers would flock to that auction house because some of the prices would be depressed on the overall market and you could get good deals. That doesn't happen really today, unless if you have a local auctioneer that no one knows about and you want to sit through a 4-hour auction where they're going to auction off used fitness equipment, grandma's old underwear, and then you might come across a Super Nintendo with 10 games. I mean, that's really how this plays out anymore. It's nothing spectacular. All your major auction houses people are aware of at this point in time. For instance, here's another auction house some of you guys have probably never heard of. Morphy's. Morphy's Auction House is literally what? Less than an hour from my house in Adamstown, Pennsylvania. They get some of the most incredible vintage advertising auctions you would ever see. The pieces are amazing. They still sell for record sums, guys. Even if you tell me, well, I never heard of Morphy Auctions. It doesn't matter. The people in the know, and that's all that matters. Good question. I'm sorry to disappoint with the answer, though. Next question. Sean, I have a question. You came to the right place. I am waiting on Wada Games to grade my factory sealed Rule of Rose for the PlayStation 2. Well, first, that is a very scarce game, at least at present time in the trade. I am a huge fan of survival horror. I commend you for having a copy that is factory sealed. I don't believe too many people did save a factory sealed copy of that game. We'll know in the next 10 years when the wonderful graded game census starts to populate so that we can see how many titles are out there of an existing title. I can tell you when Rule of Rose came out, there weren't too many people going after it because I was involved in video game collecting hardcore at that time. If it comes back less than 8.0, then it wouldn't be investment grade. The thing that confuses me about your question is, where are you getting 8.0 is the cutoff? Your question reads, if it comes back less than 8.0, then it wouldn't be investment grade. I don't understand where the 8.0 is coming from. You got to get that out of your head. Investment grade is defined as the top 15% condition-wise of items in that collectible category or of that collecting item in general. So what I mean by that is if we look at Amazing Spider-Man 300, which I consider to be a horrible long-term investment. There's too many copies out there. I would never put money in that book. I don't care if you're buying it 9.8, 9.9 condition. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make here. If you're going to buy a book like Amazing Spider-Man 300, it would have to be graded in 9.8 condition or higher just because too many copies exist of that book in that high grade. For if you bought it 9.6 condition, it would not be in the top 15%. It would not be considered investment grade. So that's how we analyze investment grade. It's just like with coins. If you have a 1921 Morgan silver dollar, that's a very common issue. That's not an investment grade coin. Now, if you have a 1921 Morgan silver dollar in MS-67, or even, I don't even know if any exist, but an MS-68, that's an item that people are going to want due to the condition rarity. That then at that point can be considered an investment grade item. Would I ever invest in a 1921 Morgan silver dollar? No, it's too common. I would rather go after a 1881 or an 1890 Carson City Morgan silver dollar. I like the Carson City issues if I'm going to collect Morgan silver dollars. So just to use that as an example. You also asked me, do you ever get FOMO? FOMO stands for fear of missing out. If you've never heard that term before, I used to. It does get me in trouble when I do get it, believe it or not. Now that I'm 43, no, I do not get FOMO anymore. I'm able to analyze and see these markets what they are. Even if I come across something that is really, truly rare, where less than 12 known examples exist in any grade, I do know that if I want to buy that item, probably sometime in my lifespan, that item will come up for sale again. There's very few items that are really that rare where you have to risk your whole financial future on buying them at that point in time. And that's something that you guys got to learn if you want to be successful in the antiques and collectibles trade. You got to control your emotions and your passion. It's just like being in a relationship. You cannot go in a relationship idealizing your partner. It's not going to work out. It's the same thing with a lot of these items. It's the same emotions that are involved. I hear people all the time tell me, hey, Sean, I love comic books or I love toys. And honestly, the way that they talk to me about those objects, I truly believe them, that they are in love with those objects. And that's both scary, but you also have to have a mindset where you understand that those items have limits and they are just another item that's out there available for purchase. Meaning just because you have a passion towards that item doesn't mean everybody else is going to. So I hope that helps. Next question. Sean, please discuss market cycles in established collectibles and which categories may be near tops or bottoms. Again, if you were to specify a collecting category or a market you wanted me to comment on, I could do it in this Q&A. This is such a broad question that I would have to devote 20, 30, 40 minutes to discussing this topic en masse. Furthermore, how can one gauge this information for themselves? Well, the fact that you're viewing this channel and you're subscribed to this channel is a start. A lot of my videos that talk about the fundamentals of the antiques and collectibles marketplace are just that, where I talk about how to analyze these trends. I will tell you what's always interesting to me, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say this. If I release a video where I put Pokemon in the title, or I put Nintendo, or I put Magic the Gathering, that video automatically anymore gets 1,000 views, if not more. If I talk about the fundamentals on analyzing some of these markets, that video alone will probably only get 500 views max. And I consider that a real tragedy, because one thing about this channel is I am really trying to take you guys inside the antiques and collectibles trade and show you how people who gravitate towards these markets analyze these markets and how they look at these items from the perspective of somebody not only educated in antiques and collectibles, but also economics and finance. And I think that's very important, and it's something that I wish more people gravitated towards. You know, I recommend that people read the articles written by Harry Rinker, and I'll get messages from people telling me, he's an old man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Are you aware how successful Harry Rinker is? How much he brought to the trade, how much he profited from the trade overall? He pretty much is one of the forefathers, much like Terry Covell, if you ever heard that name, or even Mike Wolfe through antique archaeology. That guy is really ahead of his time when we're talking about vintage advertising or vintage motorcycle parts. He knows those markets inside and out. The problem that I have with the show, American Pickers, sometimes he's kind of, how do I want to say this, cheerleading for his audience to say, but overall, he's a great guy. And the experience that he brings to the marketplace could never be replicated, I don't think, by anybody else, because most people don't have those decades of experience. So where am I going with this? You can learn this information just by paying attention to a lot of the top tier people that are involved in the antiques and collectibles trade. Even if you don't want to watch my videos, you may be watching me right now and you may be going, I can't stand this guy. It's fine. I don't want you to subscribe if you don't like the content that I produce, if you think you're forced to watch this. But if you do get something out of this, you can always build on it, not just with my content, but by like visiting Harry Rinker's website, reading his articles, reading his columns, reading my articles for Antiques and Auction News. I think I give a good insight to the antiques and collectibles trade. Even watching Antiques Roadshow, I have people tell me Antiques Roadshow is boring. Overall, the information that they discuss is top-notch, and they do talk about market cycles. So you really got to pay attention to that program and some of the experts that are commenting on that show if you really want to learn some of these more esoteric categories and how to analyze these markets. Good question. Next question. Sean, my question to you is, will the coins and currency marketplace continue to be what it is today 20 to 50 years from now? The answer is yes. Coins and currency are on the historical artifact side of the trade. You cannot compare coins and currency to comic books, to video games, to pop culture items. They're a category in their own. It doesn't matter what happens present day to physical coins and currency. If the United States Mint would stop producing coins, if the United States Bureau of Engraving and Printing would stop producing currency, those markets would still carry on because of what they represent. I keep telling you guys this. Those markets are not dying out. Those markets go through predictable cycles. Right now, coins, I really hate to tell some of you this who think that coin collecting is dying, is in a bull market. Go log on to heritage.com in their upcoming auction. I think their next one, their signature auction, is going to be in August, and try to bid on some of those items. I am facing tremendous bidding pressure from other people to the point where I'm walking away from some of these items where literally 2-3 years ago, I would have been the top bidder. It's almost like, where are these people coming from? Why now are they choosing to get into coins? What I don't understand. But it is in a bull market, some of these categories. Now, currency has always been fundamentally less popular than coin collecting. I actually like currency better because I look at it as a market with more opportunity. Currency and collecting, if you look at it as an art form, which is really what it is, those antique banknotes that you hold in your hand, the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing, which creates our paper money if you live in the United States, will never ever make banknotes like they made back in the early to late 1800s, all the way up through the early 1900s. Those banknotes are historic. If you just hold one in your hand, you really, really get a sense of nostalgia for another time. It's just Truly iconic. And I really can't explain that to you guys. That being said, those markets are established. Those markets are mature. They're not going anywhere. I really hate to bust your bubble. I have another video planned where I'm going to talk solely about currency and give you an overview of some of the people that are invested in that marketplace. Again, much like coins, a lot of multimillionaires diversify, if they are a collector at heart, into currency, into coins, into firearms, into art, into rare antiques. There's a reason for that, guys. Those markets are established and stable. You must understand that. Good question, though. Sean, I have a question for you. Can you give your thoughts on collectors showing off their collections in regards to if it hurts them or not in the long run? In regards to registry set collecting, I don't know if you know what that is. There's a CGC registry, there's PCGS registry, there's PMG registry for banknotes, collectible money. These actually are a boon to the antiques and collectibles trade. You know, on a side note, I got into an interesting discussion with a plastic surgeon who actually is a client of mine in the consulting side of the trade. And one of the things that he said to me, he said, you know, we're both in superficial markets. And I laughed because really most people look at plastic surgery and they look at that as very superficial. Most people don't look at the antiques and collectibles trade as being very superficial. Well, ironically, it is, guys. Let's be realistic here. Nobody needs a $3 million comic book. Nobody needs a $10 million coin. Nobody needs a $100 million painting. All these markets are superficial in a matter where people that own this stuff tend to like to show it off. And there's nothing wrong with that if it's done in the right way. If we're talking about registry set collecting, registry set analysis, that's done in the right way. Where if you want to collect comic books, and let's say you really like X-Men, you want to put together a high-grade key issue run of X-Men comic books, and you want to register it on the CGC registry, I will tell you, if you go to sell that collection, and it truly is a high-grade run, it's going to add value to that collection because people will look at it from the standpoint, wow, this was part of a registry set. That's why people compete on a lot of these registries for a lot of these graded collectibles, whether we're talking coins, currency, comic books, whatever it is, because it gives them notoriety in the collectibles trade, and that translates to value when they go to sell these items. So I hope I answered your question on that. I'm going to take one final question that I've been saving towards the end before I end this video series, and then again, part 3 will air on this channel in another couple of days. Congrats on 2,000 subscribers. Can you talk more about consulting in this industry, what it looks like, what people you serve, why it's so secretive, what is your typical demographic? Yes, I'm going to be unveiling a video devoted completely to antique and collectible consulting, my work in that marketplace, and I'm going to tell you how I operate, how clients contact me, how it's done. One thing though on that, guys, I do have to maintain my confidentiality. So I can't really reveal specifics. I can give you basic information. I can give you generalizations. For instance, my typical client is X number of years of age, has this much of an income, has this much of a net worth. He comes to me for this. I can do stuff like that, but I can't reveal specifics. One of the most important factors of what I do is trust and confidentiality. I'm governed by strict ethics in that marketplace. For instance, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Sean, I'm a client of yours. We've been working together off and on for the last 2 years. Just letting you know that Action Comics one that I have? Well, I'm thinking of consigning it. I just want to give you the heads up that I'm going to be putting it onto the marketplace. Now, that to me is inside information. Now, I'm not bidding on an Action Comics 1 for myself anytime soon. So it's great to know that, but I also can't tell anybody that information if I'm privy to it. The market has to find out for itself when the time is right. So there's a lot of confidentiality in that business. I will also state this. Some of you will like that video. Others of you will probably hate me when I get to the crux of that video, because once I start revealing how the consulting side of the trade works, a lot of you are going to get heartburn because there's a lot of inside information that goes with it. And as a result, you're going to see just how sometimes these markets are manipulated. So it's a very good question. Again, guys, that concludes part 2 of the 2,000 subscriber Q&A. Again, part 3 will air soon. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all your views. If you do like this channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks, and have a good night.